Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some injury updates, waiver placements, a couple of other small pieces of news, and some trade rumors involving the Maple Leafs and Nashville Predators. I'll touch on all these updates coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below, don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, we've got another news and review here to discuss. As per usual, we'll start off with a couple of signings from our past couple of days. We saw two massive signings from our past couple of days we want to touch on here today. The first one was with recent contract termination player David Kampf. Kampf was in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, didn't report to the AHL. He wasn't liking his role with the Maple Leafs, so him and the Leafs mutually agreed to terminate his contract. He was placed in unconditional waivers. He cleared, he was UFA, he could have signed wherever he wants to, and he has signed a one-year deal, AV of $1.1 million with the Vancouver Canucks. Not too surprising there. That's actually a really solid pickup here for the Canucks. He's a center/left winger. He's 30 years old. As previous cap it, I would have said that was a really bad deal for the Canucks, but this cap it, not a terrible deal. Like, Kempe is a solid guy. You can be a solid bomb six player, play fourth line minutes, be a spare. He's also really good on the penalty kill, which is something the Canucks are lacking right now. So having him enter the lineup will be a smart move there for the Canucks. And at $1.1 million for just the rest of this year, it's not a bad contract, because if it doesn't really work out, they can easily walk away from him as a UFA in next year's free agency. So I like this deal for the Canucks. Last year in Toronto, he had 5 goals and 13 points in 59 games. So once again, I think he'll be a really solid fit for the Canucks and really be able to help their penalty kill. It's not a bad pickup there for Vancouver. While in Los Angeles, one of their big premium UFA pieces finally got done, and next year's UFA class is starting to dwindle and dwindle. It's not looking like it'll be a good UFA class next year. The LA Kings have signed Adrian Kempe to an 8-year extension. He's in the final year of a 4-year deal, AV of $5.5 million. He's 29 years old. He's a winger. He can play on the left wing, the right wing. He can play on either side. He gets an 8-year extension, AAV of $10.625 million. Now, I know it's a little bit of a pricey contract for a guy who's just entering his 30s, but this isn't a terrible deal. There were a lot of people thinking that Kempe wanted $11+ million, somewhere in the Martin Necas, William Nylander sort of range at that point. And you know what? He wound up getting just a hair over $10.5 million. So he's still a $10+ million player, but it's not going as high as the Kings really didn't want to. And for what Kempe brings with the cap going up, I don't think this will be a terrible deal for the LA Kings. Maybe in years like 6 through 8, maybe, but not over the next couple of years. Kempe so far this year has 6 goals and 19 points in 19 games. At this current point in time, he is a point per game player, after he had 35 goals and 73 points in 81 games last year. So he's on pace to do a lot better than he did last year, which is really great news there for the Los Angeles Kings. So very interesting note there, but the Kings have signed Kempe to an 8-year extension, and the Canucks have signed David Kampf to a 1-year deal for the rest of this current season. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. So we got a handful of injury updates here from over the past couple of days. I'm going to just try and quickly run through them. So Radko Gudas returned to game action on Monday after missing 11 games with a lower body injury. Big boost to the Anaheim Ducks blue line. Victor Arvidsson and Charlie McAvoy both left Saturday's game for the Boston Bruins. Arvidsson left with a lower body injury and will miss some time, while Charlie McAvoy took a puck to the upper body area, face area, and he's undergoing more tests, so we don't know exactly the length of time these two players will be out, but it doesn't sound like it's overly promising, so that blows there for Boston. Rasmus Dahlin returned from his personal leave on Saturday, so it's a big boost for the Sabres to get their top defenseman back. Well, Michael Kesselring tweaked his ankle on Saturday during their game on Saturday, and he's been placed on injury reserve and may miss some time, so that's not great news there for the Buffalo Sabres. It's a little bit concerning. Samuel Honjic left Saturday's game and is now out week to week with upper body injury for the Flames. Jesperi Kotkaniemi blocked a shot on Friday, missed Saturday's game due to it. It's an ankle injury of some sorts, and he might miss a little bit of time, so it's a bad blow there for the Canes. Nick Foligno is out at least a month with a hand injury, so it's a bad blow there for the Hawks. One of their veteran leaders is left. Boone General is placed in injury reserve with upper body injury and may miss some time. It sounds like it'll be at least a couple of weeks, if not longer, so it's a bad blow there for the Jackets. To lose their captain, Jamie Benn is now only day-to-day. His status has been upgraded and is now nearing a return big news there for the Dallas Stars. Well, Thomas Harley missed Saturday's game with a lower body injury and is out week to week, while Adam Erne, Matt Duchene have both been placed on long-term injury reserve, so great news to see that Ben is nearing a return. Harley being out for at least a couple of weeks is not great news there for the Stars, and Duchene and Erne were placed on long-term injury reserve to be able to create some more roster and cap flexibility. Duchene should be able to go and be activated whenever he's healthy. Erne was already going to miss a couple of weeks, so not too surprising there. Zach Hyman made his season debut on Saturday after being activated off long-term injury reserve, missing the entire season up till Saturday, so great news there for the Oilers. Drew Doughty is out a few weeks with a lower body injury after he, I think, blocked a shot or took a bad hit on Saturday's game action, so not great news there for the Kings. Vladimir Tarasenko missed Saturday's game action with a lower body injury and is out day to day. Hopefully Tarasenko won't be out for an overly long period of time. Kirby Dach is out 4 to 6 weeks with a fractured foot. The Habs second line center is now going to be out for a little bit of time. Dach just cannot stay healthy. Jack Hughes underwent hand surgery for that freak accident he had at a team dinner and will be out next 2 months. So that is a terrible blow for the Devils to lose their star top line center for the next couple of months. While Cody Glass also didn't play on Saturday and is out week to week with upper body injury, so Glass is back out being injured. Maxim Shabanov returned from his upper body injury on Sunday after being out 3 weeks, so great news there for the New York Islanders. Will Borgen missed Saturday's game with upper body injury and is out day to day. Not great news there for the Rangers. Hopefully he'll be back in the very near future. Yoel Blomqvist and Rekha McGrady, who were both placed on season opening injury reserve, were both activated and sent back down to the minors, so they'll both play at the AHL level. Great news there for the Penguins to get one of their young up-and-coming goalies and one of their young stars-studded forward prospects back into the lineup in the AHL. Veli Koivunen missed Sunday's game over in Sweden with a lower body injury and is out day to day. Not great news there for the Penguins. Jeff Skinner was placed in injury reserve after suffering a lower body injury and is out week to week. Not great news there for the Sharks. Capo Caco is out week to week with a lower body injury as well. He's also been placed in injury reserve, while Frederick Gaudreau was activated off of injury reserve for the Kraken and returned to game action for the Kraken on Saturday. So great news to see Gaudreau, who's a solid bomb 6'4", get back into the lineup, but to lose Caco just a couple of games after he got back is a bad blow there for the Kraken. Well, bad news there for the Sharks as they lose a solid top 6 forward in Skinner. Brandon Carlo was placed in injury reserve with lower body injury and missed Saturday's game, so not great news there. Hopefully he won't be out for a terribly long period of time. Connor Garland missed Monday's game after suffering an undisclosed injury on Sunday, so not great news there. Hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time. John Carlson missed Saturday's game with upper body injuries out day to day. Hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time. And then Morgan Barron and Cole Koepke are both actively off of injury reserve and should be able to get back into game action in the very near future. So very interesting note there, but lots of very interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Next, going over to some recalls, reassignments, and waiver updates. When it comes to some reassignments, we saw a handful of players be sent back down to the minors. That includes Zach Jones in Buffalo, Kearns in Calgary, Bayreuther in Carolina, Spacek in Minnesota, Mitchell in NYI, Perot in NYR, Myers in Seattle, Pelche Kachok in Tampa, Mancini in Vancouver, and Lambert, Chibrikov, and Ford all in Winnipeg. The 3 Jets players were sent down because of the activations of Koepke and Lambert. Mancini was sent down by the Vancouver Canucks because they have a little more healthy bodies on the defensive core now. Kachok, Pelche were sent down to the AHL level by Tampa. Seems like they're getting a little bit more healthier. Myers was sent down because of the activation of Gaudreau. Perot was sent down to call up Scott Morrow, which we'll get to in a minute. Mitchell was sent down for the Islanders because they don't need him at the NHL level anymore. Spacek was sent to the minors to make room for a couple of recalls. Bayreuther was sent to the minors to make room for a couple of recalls. Kearns was sent to the minors to make room for a couple of recalls. And Zach Jones was sent to the minors because of the Rasmus Dahlin activation. So very interesting note there. Well, when it comes to some recalls, Blumel in Boston, as well as Tuft, Metza in Buffalo, Morton and Hunt in Calgary, Fensler and Nadeau in Carolina, Ogren and Pitlick in Minnesota, Delgazio in Montreal, Edwards in New Jersey, Morrow in New York R, Ostapchuk in San Jose, Quillian in Toronto, and Rooney in Utah. We're all caught up, so very interesting note there. Blumel and Tuft because of the Arvidsson injuries, Metza because they needed some extra help in the defensive core, Morton and Hunt because they just sent down Kearns, Fensler and Nadeau because they just sent down Bayreuther, Ogren and Pitlick because they just sent down Spacek. Then Delgazio was recalled for some extra reinforcements by Montreal. Edwards is reinforcements for New Jersey. Morrow because it's now Perot. Ostapchuk because he needed some help with Jeff Skinner injured right now. Quillian because they needed some help with Carlo injured right now. And Rooney because they needed some added forward depth in Utah. So very interesting note there, lots of recalls and reassignments. A couple of interesting waiver updates. On our last news rumor video, we talked about how Troy Stecher was on waivers. I said there was a very good chance some teams will claim him because he's a cheap defenseman who can play 6-7 minutes. Well, he was claimed. A little bit of a surprising team did claim him, but Troy Stecher was claimed by the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the Leafs are having a little bit of problems on their blue line. Tana's injured right now. Carlo's injured right now. So the blue line's looking a little bit battered at this point in time. So having Stecher be able to be added to that team and be able to be sort of like a stabilizing third pair defensive force with some of those other guys injured is not too surprising. And this cap, it doesn't really hurt the Maple Leafs at all. So very interesting note there. But Stecher was claimed off of waivers by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Well, newly on waivers right now is John Beecher in Boston. As I'm recording this video, I do not know the outcome of this waiver placement. I think there's a very good chance Beecher could get claimed. He's on a cheap contract. He's young. He's not too old. And he's sort of worked out really well as like a solid, hard-hitting bottom six forward in the Bruins organization. And he's also a center, which a lot of teams really could use at this point in time. So I wouldn't be terribly shocked if he cleared, but I also wouldn't be too surprised if he was claimed as well. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. But Stecher was claimed off of waivers by the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Beecher is currently on waivers for the Boston Bruins. Very interesting note there. One other very interesting piece of news in Vegas is that Carter Hart was officially assigned to the AHL on a conditioning stint, which the Knights are able to do. Knight can't play at the NHL level, I think, until December 1st or December 15th. So he's getting some reps at the AHL level. We'll see how he does. After now playing hockey for a year and a half, so we'll see how he does. But very interesting to know that Hart is now in the AHL on a conditioning stint, so very interesting to note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we got a couple of trade rumors here to talk about. We're going to start off with the Toronto Maple Leafs. According to David Pagnotta, he says that the Leafs, in order to try and get some sort of a big improvement, which they've been trying to do all season long, they're going to have to cut some sort of cap to make the money work for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We've heard them recently been linked to Rasmus Anderson. Apparently last year they had some interest in Brayden Schenn. They've been linked to Nazem Kadri. We know that they want to try and add one more top six forward, whether that be a center or a wing, potentially try and rework some things on the blue line. So with all of this in mind, that means that they have to move off some cap. Now the two players that David Pagnotta did mention have been coming up recently, and he says could wind up being moved, are Max Domi and Brandon Carlo. We've heard Brandon Carlo ever since the offseason. He seems to be the guy who the Leafs would probably try and trade if they're trying to get some sort of a better defenseman. They have a couple of really solid shutdown defenseman, which is what Carlo is, and they would want a more puck moving type guy. They could also use him as trade fodder to try and add someone on the blue line, which is another possibility they could try and do. So I could definitely see Carlo get moved if it was the right price, but given the high price that they paid the Bruins for, which was a Minton and a first round pick, I don't think they would move him unless it would be the exact right price that they want. So I'll have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Brandon Carlo's potential being a cap dump by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Another guy will be Max Domi. Domi's, I think, got 2 or 3 years left at just over $3 million. He hasn't worked overly well this year with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a decent middle six forward, but he hasn't really fit overly well in Toronto. He's a center / left winger. He can play as center. He can play as a winger. I think he's more suited to play on the wing. So I could see him be dealt. I think it's a possibility, but I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, as I think he's also a really solid middle six forward, even if he hasn't shown the best of things in Toronto up to this point. So very interesting note there, but David Pagnotta does mention that the Leafs are going to have to get creative when it comes to potentially making a trade for an improvement because of their tight cap space. And he says that Brandon Carlo and Max Domi, who have been mentioned recently, could wind up being dealt as trade fodder, as cap dumps. So we should wait and see on that. Next, going over to the Nashville Predators, David Pagnotta was also talking about them, and he says that Marchessault and Stamkos, come the trade deadline, would be open to waiving their current no movement clauses to go to contenders, he is saying. So very interesting note there. It seems like Pagnotta does think that both veteran forwards would be open to fresh starts and waiving their no movement clauses if it was to go to a legit contender. Stamkos has not had the greatest of starts this season. Neither has Marchessault. Last year, I think they both had just over 50 points after putting up really solid seasons the year prior. Marchessault with Vegas, Stamkos with Tampa. So those deals don't seem to be working out overly well for the Predators right now. So with that in mind, with them looking like they're going to be a seller at this point and potentially making some moves when it comes to dealing off some pieces, it does seem like there's a very likely chance we could see the Preds move off of Marchessault and and or Stamkos. I think at this point in time, Marchessault might be the easier one because he got less of a cap hit, and he's also been producing a little bit better than Stamkos has. But I think if there was the right situation, there was enough cap retention, and it wasn't for an overly egregious ask, I could see some teams that have some interest in them. Stamkos, in the right situation, could be a really solid second-line center or play on the wing and be a really solid goal scorer. Marchessault is also shown in the past he can be a really solid goal scorer, playing in a top 6 role. So it just doesn't seem like it's fitting overly well in Nashville, and with the Predators floundering right now, 4 games below 500 at the 20-game mark, it seems like according to David Pagnotta, both Marchessault and Stamkos would be open to consider waiving their moving clause if it was to be able to be traded to a legit contender. So we should wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to Jeff Marek. Now, this isn't any sort of actual speculation like being linked or anything. He's just wondering this. But Jeff Marek did say with Nashville sort of spinning their wheels right now and it's starting to be not overly great, and it seems that they're going to be a seller come the trade deadline, he says if it keeps on getting worse, he wonders if a guy who could wind up being dealt is Filip Forsberg. Now, I don't think this is a serious potential because of how big Forsberg is for that Nashville Predators team, but imagine if he was to come on the block. Like, Forsberg is a legit 40 to 50 goal scorer, a top line winger. Like, I think there would be teams lining up the door to be able to acquire Forsberg. And he's only got 4 years left at an $8.5 million cap hit. So I could see a lot of teams, if he was to come available, which I highly doubt, have some major interest in Filip Forsberg, especially some of those younger teams who have a lot of picks and prospects and cap space, like Anaheim, Utah, and Seattle. So we shall wait and see on that. I highly doubt the Predators deal Forsberg. I think they easily deal guys like Bunting, Marchessault, Stamkos, Blankenberg well before they deal a guy like Filip Forsberg. But I mean, they could get like 2-3 first-round picks, a really solid young prospect, someone who's on the roster and established at the NHL level already. Like, they could get a haul if they were to wind up dealing him. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think Marek was just speculating if it got to that point, would they consider a Filip Forsberg deal? I don't think so, but it's a very interesting concept that I think a lot of teams would love to see happen in reality. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But keep your eye on the Nashville Predators. They're definitely going to make some moves come the trade deadline and move out some veterans. And while I don't think it's a very likely possibility, wonder if we do see Filip Forsberg's name out there in the rumor mill. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's what I'm going to talk for today. I left you guys' thoughts. Do you think Filip Forsberg gets dealt by the Nashville Predators come the trade deadline? Do you think that the Predators could try and move Stamkos and Marchessault, and would they be open to a trade? And do you think that the Toronto Maple Leafs could move Carlo and Domi as cap dumps? Definitely touch all of that, plus all the news updates, the waivers, the injuries, and the signings. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Until this video, and if you're liking, subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this for all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. Also a blog to news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. And links in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.